Hey, welcome back, Ram fans. Mark from Rams Up here. I'm going to take a hard look at this Rams schedule, do a bit of a deep dive. Going to do it piecemeal, though. First thing I'm going to do is take another long look at the schedule and share some tidbits, some interesting facts about it, some stuff all of us Ram fans should be aware of. And then in this part one of my review of the Rams schedule, I'm going to look at the five AFC opponents. Going to do it a little bit differently. I'm not going to go chronologically. I will go chronologically, but just among those AFC teams that we're playing. And we're all playing them all pretty early, too. And I'll give a best and worst case scenario for those five games, those five AFC games. And then we'll do the same for the NFC South opponents, the two oddball NFC teams will be playing. That'd be the Eagles and the Lions, and then the NFC West. And then at the end, I'll tell you what the Rams record's going to be, worst and best case scenario. So the first thing I wanted to do, had some time to really review this schedule and look at some interesting facts. Well, first, the preseason schedule. Ram fans don't care too much about the preseason. Cowboys, Chargers, and then at Cleveland. That's August 9th, 16th, and the 23rd, respectively. The first two games, the Cowboys and the Chargers, 4 p.m. on Saturdays. And then the Browns game is a morning game in Cleveland. And, you know, as we know, as Ram fans, this will basically be about Sean McVay and his staff getting a hard look at a lot of young players, players battling for roster spots. Now, it'll be interesting to see, given the Rams' slow starts in recent years, will McVay change it up a little bit and play the starters more? I think he's definitely going to sit down the key players throughout the preseason. But I wouldn't be surprised if he had some guys that maybe in past years wouldn't have played hardly at all in the preseason get a few more snaps, especially in that final game against Cleveland. Maybe, I don't know. Then again, Sean McVay, you know, the formula has overall worked, except for the slow starts. Right, we're still, you know, a relevant team, a playoff team most years. So we'll see if McVay changes it up in that regard. Now, weeks 1 through 8, pretty heavy on the AFC South. These five teams that I'm going to talk about today are all in the first 8 weeks. And, you know, there is a sliver of the schedule there that does concern me. I had originally said, you know, really no, stretches that overly concern me. But then looking at it again at the Eagles on September 21st, then that home game with the Colts, and then the Thursday night game with the 49ers 4 days later, and then out to Baltimore for a 10 a.m. game. If there is, that's the toughest stretch right there, right? Eagles, Colts, 49ers, Ravens. Yeah, that makes that Colts game even more important, right? Gotta beat the Colts at home. That may be one of the key games. If they were to somehow lose that game, and the Colts, you know, we'll talk about them here in a minute, not a bad football team. Maybe some questions at quarterback, but that's a game that concerns me. I think it's just elevated importance because, you know, the games around it, Eagles, 49ers, Ravens, man, that is a little bit of a tough slog there. And then you get into the second half, and it's heavy on NFC teams. They're all NFC teams, actually, weeks 9 through 18. And late in the year, we get the Cardinals twice and the Seahawks over those last 5 games. So, and we'll be done with the 49ers after November 9th. After week 10? After week 10, we will not see the 49ers again unless it's in the playoffs, which that could happen, could very well happen. Now, dissecting the schedule a little bit more, well, 8 home games, 9 away. We knew that going in. Now, there are some years, you know, the best scenario for the Rams is when they have the Chargers, a road game at the LA Chargers, always sweetens the pot a little bit for them. Not this year. 8 home games, 9 away games. They have no stretch of more than 2 games in a row, home or away. So as Ian mentioned in our initial reaction, very balanced. They got the 5 playoff teams, the Texans at the Eagles, at the Ravens, and then the Bucks and Lions at home. And as I mentioned, last 9 games. Of the last 9 games, 5 against the AFC. What else? More notes here. After getting back from London on October 20th, the Rams don't leave California again until November 28th. And why is that? Well, they have a bye, they have a trip to Santa Clara, and then they have, I think it is 3 home games. So that is a time for the Rams to get rich, perhaps, if nothing else. Let their bodies heal and their mental state heal a little bit. Not much travel there. And then they do have another little bit of a gift time-wise at the end there, 11 days of rest prior to that trip to play Atlanta on Monday night. And that's because the previous game is the Thursday night game. So they go Thursday night, and then next game isn't through the weekend into Monday night in Atlanta. So that's a bit of an advantage there as well. Start times, and this is the one thing I always look at, and my special assistant actually cares a lot about this. Now, we differ in opinion. He likes those 125 games. I like the 10 a.m. games, but that's just me. His point is, it's nice to just be able to chill and watch some football on Sunday morning stress-free. I can't handle it. I can't wait. I need the Rams to get on the field and play. Let's get it done. And also being a content creator, those 10 a.m. games are a little bit nicer. Sometimes those late afternoon games, it just makes for a time crunch on a Sunday afternoon, Sunday evening. But that said, they have one game at 6:30 a.m., obviously. That's the game in London. They have 4 10 a.m. road games, the Titans, Eagles, Ravens, and Panthers. And that can be tough for a West Coast team playing at 10 a.m., and that was called out on CBS Sports. And I'm going to cite them again here a little bit later as probably the worst takeaway on this schedule for the Rams. But if I'm not mistaken, I should have done a data dive on this, and I will as soon as I'm done here. I'm pretty sure McVay's teams have fared well in those East Coast games in the morning. They have 3 105 games. Those are all home games, of course. The Colts, Saints, and Seahawks. And then they have 4 of those 125 games, those games my special assistant loves. 2 of them, the Texans and the Lions at home. And then 2 road games, NFC West road games at 125. That would be the 49ers and Cardinals. 4 primetime games. And, I started hearing this term. I don't know if I had heard it before this year. Standalone games. And those would be, the international games played at 6:30, the Thanksgiving Day games, primetime games, where you're the only show in town. You're the only show on TV. The Rams actually have 5 of those. They got the 4 primetime games and then the London game. Thursday Night Football, they have 2, both NFC West games, the 49ers at SoFi and then at Seattle. And then they have the Sunday Night Football game at SoFi, the Monday night game at Atlanta. And then there's the one last game to be determined, Week 18, the home game against the Cardinals. The NFL does not tell you where they are going to be until, prior to Week 18, because, well, we all know how that works. The most relevant games will be divvied up. The key game, if there's a divisional title on the line, of course, they'll play that Sunday night. And they try to arrange these games so that teams don't get the advantage of knowing a result, and then they can back off and rest their guys. If 2 teams have a division at stake, but they're playing different opponents, they put those games at the same time, or at least try to. And then they have the Saturday games as well, of course, that final weekend. And bird watching, this is the other thing I grabbed from CBS Sports, so shout out to them. The Rams can be the first team to beat all 5 bird teams in the same season. That'd be the Falcons, Ravens, Eagles, Seahawks, and Cardinals. Apparently, this has never happened. And one of the reasons it's never happened is because there aren't that many opportunities. It's probably going to have to be an NFC team that has the opportunity to play all 5 of these teams, and that would be the Rams in this case. Two of them in the NFC West, the Seahawks and the Cardinals. They're playing the NFC South this year by chance, so there's the Falcons. They're a first-place team, so they are playing the Eagles, and the AFC team on the rotation, the oddball AFC team, happens to be the AFC North, so they get the Ravens. I don't know how often this has happened, but not very often apparently. And there you have it. The Rams will be bird watching this year, trying to take down 5 different birds. They could actually take down 7 because they play the Cardinals and Seahawks twice. Wouldn't that be something? But a little tidbit, kind of a funny thing to keep track of there. The Rams playing the 5 bird teams. And one final note, the Rams will face the top 5 rushers in the league from last year. That would be Barkley, the second guy on that list, Derrick Henry, and then Bijan Robinson, Jonathan Taylor, and Jamar Gibbs. Rams play all 5 of these guys. Welcome to the Rams Poona Ford. Your services are desperately needed. And, a guy like Chris Paul, Nathan Landman, these guys could probably help out a little bit in that regard. Interesting stat I happened to stumble across all by myself. I didn't steal that from anybody. Rams take on the top 5 rushers from the 2024 season this year. Okay, let's start talking about these matchups. The 5 teams the Rams are going to play in the AFC, and we'll start with the Houston Texans, coached by DeMeco Ryans, the old 49er DC. We all remember him. They were 10-7 last year, the AFC South champions, and they beat the Chargers in the wild card round. That was a really ugly game if you're a Charger fan, or if you're a Justin Herbert fan. I think it was 6 interceptions, was it? Really dreadful game. Then the Texans went on to play the Chiefs in the divisional round and got bounced 23-14. Rams have a 4-1 record historically against the Texans. Their last time they played was Halloween, October 23rd, 2021. Rams 38, Texans 22. Wasn't that close. Wasn't even that close. The Rams rushed for 165 yards. Darrell Henderson and Sony Michel doing the heavy lifting there. Stafford threw for over 300 yards, and Rams won that one going away. Draft picks of note for this team. Well, first, I should probably tell you, let's talk about their offensive line before we get to their draft picks. They had serious issues protecting the quarterback last year. They gave up 54 sacks last year. Not good. They also get after the quarterback, but in this defense, really good defensive team, but pass the ball well, run the ball well, just cannot protect the quarterback. So what did they do? They had 3 offensive linemen that combined for 41 sacks, 41 starts last year, I should say. They moved on from them, and they signed Laken Tomlinson, they signed Cam Robinson, and then they drafted in the second round out of Minnesota offensive tackle Arisante Ursary. So 3 new offensive linemen. And, if you're a Texans fan, you have to hope they have it figured out up front before they come into SoFi to play this young and hungry Rams front 7. Otherwise, they're going to be in trouble. Jared Verse, Byron Young, Kobe Turner, these guys are going to be coming after CJ Stroud from the get-go, and they're going to test this offensive line. But back to the draft, aside from Ursary, the other guys they drafted of note, 2 wide receivers from Iowa State, Jaden Higgins and Jalen Knoll. Higgins was a guy that Ian talked about in his receivers that were worthy of priority premier draft picks, meaning the first 3 rounds, and they also drafted Jalen Knoll. So 2 Iowa State wide receivers, and then 2 USC Trojans they drafted, cornerback Jalen Smith and running back Woody Marks. So key players on this team, obviously quarterback CJ Stroud, he's the real deal. Nico Collins, the wide receiver, over 1,000 yards receiving. Their other wide receiver, a very good player, Tank Dell, suffered that really bad knee injury, so he will not be back in time for this game. Joe Mixon, just over 1,000 yards rushing. Cornerback Derek Stingley Jr., all pro. And then they have those two defensive ends, Daniel Hunter and Will Anderson, combined for 23 of this team's 49 sacks. So they get after the quarterback as well. So, that's probably the biggest question in this game. Two quality teams. I think the Rams defense will be improved, especially against the run. And especially the Texans defense, I think you can count on them, challenging this Rams offense and keeping things interesting. The question is this Texans offensive line up to the task? It's going to be improved, but sometimes that takes a little time. It takes a little time for an offensive line to gel. And, they're going to have to play a little bit in the preseason together, I think, to get it squared away. Still, the biggest question mark with the Texans is that offensive line. And the biggest question for the Rams, they haven't stopped the run yet, right? They added Poona Ford. They added some linebackers. And we haven't seen them do that, though. They got much better at the end of the year, of course, but then Barkley got him again in the playoff game. So that'll be the big test. A big question for the Rams. Have they solved their run defense? Big question for the Texans. Can they protect the quarterback? Rams favored by 3 out of the gate here. Going to be a big game for our Rams at home. Games you got to win at home, right? They have been such slow starters. Got to change this around. Get a win coming out of the gate. 1-0 start. That would be great. I'm going to save my predictions here for the end, though. We get through these other 4 AFC teams. And we have game number 2 against the AFC, and that's week 2 against the Tennessee Titans. We fly across the country for that Super Bowl matchup. We all remember it. Mike Jones tackling Kevin Dyson, and the Rams have their Super Bowl victory. The Titans last year, 3-14, last place in the AFC South. They had really serious quarterback issues. Will Levis running the show there. Their coach is Brian Callahan, great offensive mind. And last time these teams played, that was November 7th, 2021. That must have been the week after the Rams played the Texans last time around. And the Titans won that game 28-18. The Titans outscored the Rams 21-0 in the second quarter. Does that sound familiar? It sounds like type of thing that happened to us last year. And that 21-0 spurt included a 24-yard pick six by Kevin Byard. So that year they played the Texans and Titans back-to-back, and they do it again this year. So key players, you really narrowed it down to 3 guys here, and there's probably more than that. I get it. This is not a very strong roster at this point. They have the new quarterback, number 1 pick overall, Cam Ward. Gonna kind of all be about him, right? How quickly can he get acclimated? And he is a weapon with his feet and his arm. It's going to be a challenge for the Rams. This is the type of quarterback that usually gives us trouble. So it's just a matter of how quickly he gets it going at the NFL level, if he gets it going at all. Hopefully it's week 3 that happens, right? Running back Tony Pollard, remember he's the old Cowboys running back, and wide receiver Calvin Ridley. It's a different team from last year, especially at the quarterback position. Pollard, by the way, had over 1,000 yards rushing, Ridley over 1,000 yards receiving. And, that's about it on the offensive side that they have to squawk about, Pollard and Ridley, and now Ward, of course. Other than Ward, who else did they pick? Well, they drafted Oluwafemi Alajedo, the edge rusher out of UCLA. That's a fun name. And they also drafted another former Pac-12 player, round 4, Alec Ayamaner, the wide receiver. He's the Canadian Cardinal, played for the Stanford Cardinal, and he's a guy that we had talked about maybe the Rams being interested in. Free agency, hey, Tyler Lockett's on board, as is safety Xavier Woods. Offensive guard Kevin Zeitler comes over from the Lions, and 2 ex-Rams, Van Jefferson and Sebastian Joseph Day. So both those guys are going to want to have a strong showing against the Rams, especially Van Jefferson, I would think. So, seventh worst overall offense last year, but that was with Levis at the quarterback position. They managed just 195 yards passing per game. So, do the math there, 195 yards passing per game. And Ridley had over 1,000. So, what did the rest of the team contribute? Not much. Defense gave up just 311 yards per game, though. So the defense is solid. That's number 2 in the league in yards allowed per game. So 3-14. I'm not going to tell you they're a crappy football team. They were a team that had major issues at quarterback, and maybe they addressed that. So flying across the country, taking on a team like this, it's not a gimme. The odds are probably going to be, my guess, depending on what happens week 1. I'd still expect the Rams to be, 5.5, 6-point favors in this game. But it all depends on week 1. That could change things. Rams at Titans. And man, if the Rams can't snag a win against the Texans at home, this is good. I'm never going to call a week 2 game must win, but it's a game they better go out and get the W for sure. Hey, even if they beat the Texans, this is a game you want to just get the W, get to 2-0. That would be awesome. Now let's move on to my trap game, and that would be the Indianapolis Colts at SoFi Stadium. Now, this is sandwiched in between the game at Philadelphia and then the Thursday night game against the 49ers. And that 49er game is followed by the game with the Ravens. So a game that you would think would be easy to overlook, and this is a team you should not overlook. Head coach Shane Steichen, they were 8-9 last year, second place in the AFC South, and they had quarterback issues. Anthony Richardson not playing up to his draft value, that's for sure. But running back Jonathan Taylor, wide receiver Michael Pittman, 2 very good players, defensive end Kwity Paye, and then there's Zaire Franklin, who led the league in tackles, 173 tackles. Taylor had over 1,400 yards rushing, 4th in the league. Now, the question is, who's their quarterback? Is it Anthony Richardson? Is it Daniel Jones? I don't know. We'll have to see. They got a pretty big quarterback room there at this point. And my money's on Richardson, but he needs to get it together. The last time these teams played, by the way, the Colts lead this series 23-22 with 1 tie. And for you young folks, you don't probably know this, but back in the late 60s, early 70s, these 2 teams were in the same division. And Johnny Unitas versus Roman Gabriel, it was a thing, and it was a lot of fun. And I think the Colts usually got the better of us. They were one of the better teams. I still remember in elementary school, I had a couple of bozo friends that would wear Johnny Unitas jerseys to school. I could never figure it out. This is in Ventura County, and they're wearing Johnny U shirts, whatever. But anyways, last time they played, that was that Puka coming out party a little bit, right? That overtime catch, Stafford to Puka for the win. Rams were winning that game 23-0, and then the Colts scored 2 late touchdowns, a 2-point conversion to send it in overtime, and then Stafford to Puka for the win. Samson Ebukam is on this team, by the way, as is the second-year player Latu, a guy that a lot of people compared to Jared Verse, who's going to be better, who's the better pro. Latu's shaping up to be a pretty darn good player himself, so I can't say the Colts went wrong drafting him. Free agency, they brought in Charvarius Ward, Daniel Jones, we already mentioned, and another ex-Ram, Neville Gallimore. So he will be pumped up to play the Rams as well. So 8-9 last year, but they had just 198 yards passing per game, one of the worst in the league, and that's got to change. And I don't know that it will with this quarterback situation. Daniel Jones and Anthony Richardson both have some wheels, though, and early in the year, that may be their saving grace against a team like the Rams. They were the 8th best team in the league rushing the ball, 137 yards per game, led by, of course, Jonathan Taylor. Then you got the team that we all dread playing, don't we? The Baltimore Ravens, led by head coach John Harbaugh. 12-5 last year, won the AFC North, and then they beat the Steelers in the wild card game, fell to the Bills in the divisional round. But man, this is a really good football team. Ravens have won 5 of the last 6, 2 of those coming in overtime, and we remember that last one. Rams forced overtime, and then that kick return with the block in the back. It was a block in the back, and the Rams fall to the Ravens. And that, if I remember correctly, they went on a big winning streak right after that. So maybe it worked in the Rams' favor in the long run, but that was a game they had a great shot at winning it, but that kick return killed them. Players of note, well, there's a bunch of them. They had 11 Pro Bowlers and 6 All-Pro players last year, led by Lamar Jackson. 4,172 yards passing, 915 yards rushing. Yes, he was an All-Pro. Derrick Henry, over 1,900 yards rushing. Raquan Smith, 154 tackles, another Pro Bowler. Kyle Hamilton, great safety, Pro Bowler. Kyle Van Noy, the linebacker, 12 and a half sacks. Man, there's just a bunch of good players on this team. Tight end Mark Andrews. And then they added some nice picks. Malachi Starks, the safety out of Georgia. As soon as the Ravens picked him in the 27th overall in the first round, that's when you knew, yeah, Starks probably is going to be a great player, right? When the Ravens pick a safety, it's going to work out all right. They also picked the edge rusher Mike Green out of Marshall. And an offensive tackle, we had talked about Emory Jones out of LSU. And free agency, they added Chidobe Awuzie, the cornerback, the Bengals cornerback, a guy that I thought the Rams might pursue. And then the wide receiver, the great wide receiver, DeAndre Hopkins. So, if there has been a shortcoming on this Ravens team over the last few years, it's been their wide receiver group, and they tried to address that. I'm not sure they have, but DeAndre Hopkins, you can do a lot worse. They also signed a linebacker by the name of Jake Hummel, so he'll be a second stringer, a special teams player there for Baltimore. Stats of note, they averaged 425 yards per game, led the league. That included 188 yards rushing, and second in the league with 54 sacks. This is just a complete football team, really no holes. I guess the question that Ravens fans typically have, it's reserved for playoff time, right? What happens with this team in the playoffs? Can they ever get over the hump with Lamar Jackson just kind of cursed in the playoffs? I think the commentary on Lamar Jackson, whether it's justified or not, is that he tries to be something other than Lamar Jackson come playoff time instead of doing what he's done all year long, and that's tucking and run it when he needs to. But hey, we'll save that conversation for the Rams-Ravens Super Bowl. How about that? Rams-Ravens in Baltimore, going to be a tough game. And as Ian and I talked about, you don't want to just say, certainly the Rams have a chance in this game. But if there's a game that the Rams can afford to lose, it would be this one. But man, it would be sweet, extra sweet when you can get a win against a quality team like the Baltimore Ravens. And they are absolutely a quality team, no question about it. And let's move on to the final team, London Calling, Rams and Jags. And this is a team that went 4-13 last year. That was good enough for third place in the very weak AFC South. And head coach Liam Cohen, the Rams' old offensive coordinator. And does that give the Jags a little bit of an advantage? And, Gladstone, their new general manager, knows the Rams players really well. But hey, this game's going to be won or lost on the field, and Rams certainly have a big edge roster-wise. The last time these teams met, by the way, the Rams lead the series 5-1. The only loss was in overtime. The Jags 23, the St. Louis Rams 20. In what year was that? That was 2009. The Rams, the last time these teams met, the Rams won 37-7, and that was on December 5th, 2021 at SoFi. Sony Michel, here's that name again. And why does his name keep on popping up? Well, that was when the Rams were going to Sony Michel. The same year the Rams were playing the AFC South. That's just how it works. Key players, quarterback Trevor Lawrence, been a little bit of a bummer for him. It certainly has the talent, at least it seems like it, but then, it just doesn't translate on the field on a regular basis, really inconsistent. Wide receiver Brian Thomas is the real deal, 1,282 yards receiving and a Pro Bowl selection. And Travon Walker, 10.5 sacks. He was a guy the Jags, I should say, were criticized for drafting. And, I've been talking about key players, those of you viewing on the YouTube channel. The only key player I've included on this presentation is this guy, cornerback wide receiver Travis Hunter, and he could be a difference maker. Now, how they deploy him, that remains to be seen. But man, he is going to be a weapon regardless of how they deploy him. I imagine he's going to be primarily used on offense with spot duty on defense, because I think Jared Verse talked about this, because Jared Verse played some tight end a while back in his college days, and it's not easy just to run out and take a few snaps here and there as an offensive player. You got to be ingrained in the playbook much more so than the defensive side. A cornerback, you can just run him out there and tell him to shut down a wide receiver. So I think that's how they're going to use him. That'd be my guess, and that's going to be a challenge for the Rams defense, because this is an electric, special, perhaps generational player. But this roster does have some serious shortcomings. Their other draft pick, round 4 of note anyways, is Bashil Tutin, the running back out of Virginia Tech. How many times did we talk about him in the run-up to the draft? A guy that Scott Richmond and I both really wanted. I think Ian liked him too. And if nothing else, he could be one of the top kick returners in the league by the time this game rolls around. But Jags had some issues last year. They 204 yards passing per game, not a good output from Trevor Lawrence and his wide receivers. So that's got to change. And that's why another reason why you might see Travis Hunter on the offensive side of the ball more so than on defense. Now, where does that leave us? Well, we got these 5 AFC games. The Texans, Titans, Colts, Ravens, and Jags. Those games are in weeks 1, 2, 4, 7, and 8. By week 9, these 5 games will be in a rearview mirror. How do I think they're going to do? Well, I'm not going to give you predictions game by game, but I'm going to tell you how I think we will do over the course of these 5 games. I'm going to give you a best and worst case scenario, and then we'll continue that through the other blocks of these games. We'll be talking about the NFC South opponents, the 2 oddball NFC teams, the Lions and the Eagles, and then, of course, our divisional opponents. But altogether, there's no way the Rams are going to be able to sweep these 5 teams. I find that highly unlikely. If they were, that would indicate the Rams are indeed a Super Bowl favorite, if they can beat these 5 AFC teams, recognizing that interconference games are not as valuable win-wise as our games against NFC teams and divisional opponents. But, it's a pretty rock-solid result if you could sweep all 5 of these, or even go 4-1, and even that's going to be a challenge. But I think that is attainable, as good as this Rams roster is. Now, the Ravens are going to be the toughest out, obviously, on the road in Baltimore. The Texans would be the second most difficult opponent opening day. I think the Rams will have an advantage there going up against that rebuilt offensive line. The Titans, really good defense, and that's what scares me about them. And then there's Cam Ward, of course. The Colts, another quality team. Jonathan Taylor in that running attack, have some questions at quarterback. And then the Jags, Travis Hunter is going to juice up that offense. But overall, how do I think they're going to do? I'm going to tell you that my worst case scenario against these AFC teams is 3-2, and the best case is 4-1. I think the Rams get 3 wins. If they go south of 3-2, they're going to have to make up the difference elsewhere. They cannot afford to go underwater against these AFC teams, in my opinion. Not that it wouldn't be the end of the world, the end of their playoff hopes if they were to go 2-3 against these teams. But I'm predicting worst case 3-2, best case 4-1. So we'll continue piling up these worst and best case scenarios. I'll have an end result here. Next up, in the next day or two, we will talk about the Rams' NFC South opponents, the Saints, Falcons, Buccaneers, and Panthers.